almost forgotten to invite us to go with them. Well, tonight, or last week, the town board supplied food for us from Cafe One's Neighborhood, and tonight from Slice of Pizza. And I thank both, on behalf of the committee, I thank both establishments for providing the food and the town board for sending it. And then I would encourage you to go by to these both Neighborhood Cafe and Slice of Pizza and see what else they have to offer that you might enjoy purchasing for your meal. Thank you.
I didn't pay her to make that one out.
No, it's well said.
So, okay, last week, we had, that was the first time under the town board's new instructions to us, and one was about the advisory group sitting on the public seats, and they did so, and there was also a thing about speaking. And it seems like after I reread it several times and all, that if I acknowledged them, they could speak shortly on the subject that was on the agenda at that time. And so I'm sorry that if somebody wanted to speak and I didn't recognize them, and if you want to, raise your hand. All right. We're ready to call. Can you call the roll for us? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Nate Bowman?
Here.
Gaywood Campbell? Doug Ferguson?
Here.
Sean Flynn? John Foster?
Here.
Barbara Gerhart?
Here.
Charles Guignard?
Here.
Lee Hallman? Janelle Harris?
Here.
Elaine Kearns?
Here.
Bob Lemon?
Here.
Sarah McCauley?
Here.
Elizabeth Rodriguez? Cindy Trevison? And Jessica Tucker?
Here.
Madam Chair, would you like me to call the roll for ex officio or not?
I'm sorry.
Should I call the roll for the non-voting members too?
Sure.
Okay. April Dunn? Kathy Jones?
Here.
John McClelland? Diane McLean? John O'Neill? Mike Russell? Stephen Swannick? You have a quorum, ma'am.
Next item on the agenda is to approve the agenda.
Madam Chairperson, I'll make a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Second.
So, Lemon, any discussion, all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, none. The motion carries. The next item is the approval of the minutes for the June 9th meeting.
Madam Chairperson, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as presented for the last meeting we had on September 22nd.
Any second?
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. The next item is the chairman's comments, and I probably already said those, and thanks for the town board and Cafe 100 and Cafe Neighborhood and pizza, slice of pizza. Next item, any public comments?
No, ma'am.
Thank you. Next item is Department of Engineer, Steve Trotter. Thank you, Steve.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So wanted to just give a brief overview of the transportation projects that are currently underway, ones that are upcoming, and see if there were any questions on that. It may be information that you already know, but we'll just go over it quickly. So as you can see up on the map, just have a vicinity map. This is the only slide I have. Just wanted to show what projects are out there now and what may be coming down the pipe. So the project in yellow on the right side of the screen, as you all know, that's the Main Street project. That's out there under construction now, roundabout north and south of where Huntersville Concord Road is, to give a parallel route to 115 through the area. Also on the map, more on the left side, you have the Gilead Road interchange and US 21 at Gilead intersection projects. Actually, two separate projects the state are doing, but they're combined into one, let as one project, and currently underway. Main Street project probably has about another year of construction, just giving general time frame. The 21 and Gilead and interchange project, early 2025 is the current projected completion date on that. Another project that's up here that's kind of folded in to the 21 Gilead project is the Holbrook Street Extension project the town did. It's extending Holbrook Street to the west from Marguerite over to where the Aldi's is located. That was a project that was completed recently. That was a town project. So those are the projects that are shown up here that are either under construction or have recently been completed. Projects that are in the CIP that we're currently working on right now, although you don't see any work out there now, is the Commerce Center Drive project. This is going, there we go. So up on the screen, so right now, so Holbrook Street extension was completed. Everybody see where I'm pointing up there? That was completed, and there was a stub that was put, about halfway up on some town-owned property here. So the project will extend Commerce Center and then realign the intersection here, which will be a traffic signal as part of the 21 and Gilead project. So the town's going to make that connection and make that a four-way intersection. We're currently working on the plans for that project right now.
So is that going to go up at Gilead Road going north on the south side? Is that going to be the parking area, the drive between the automobile place and where the dumpsters used to be?
Yeah, so it'll just be a two-lane street that'll connect up. The town owns the property there, and it'll kind of come up through the trees. I think there's a bus stop or something right there.
Okay.
Right there right now. That's right where it'll come out.
All right, thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. There's Church Street, Holbrooks to Delwood. That's just off the screen, but Church Street extension down to the south, that's right at the edge. So that'll connect up Holbrooks and Delwood, right there parallel to the railroad tracks. Currently working on that. Also working on Gibson Park Phase 2. It's hard to get everything all on one map, but Gibson Park Phase 2, that's improving Gibson Park Drive, widening the street just a little bit and adding sidewalk on one side of the street. That project's currently in property acquisition right now. Also, on the north side, we have the Siegel 4th Street project. That's improving Siegel Street between Rama Church and 4th Street, and then improving 4th Street between Siegel over to Glendale. Minor widening and adding sidewalk on one side of the street. That's really tight through there. And then finally, the other project that's currently underway is adding sidewalk. The Main Street project goes along Huntersville Concord, but stops short of Warfield. Is that Warfield right there?
Warfield.
So we're working on a project to extend the sidewalk on the south side of the road over to that intersection. Hope to do that either right at the end of the Main Street project or while they're out there doing that. Now, some projects that we haven't started on but are on the CIP list right now, currently shown in the future year, are Church Street realignment to Walters. So right now, Church Street comes up and stops at Huntersville Concord Road. As part of the Main Street project, there'll be a median that goes across Huntersville Concord Road, so you won't be able to go through on Church Street anymore. So this project would realign Church Street over to Walters Street, kind of in this general area here. It's not designed yet. This is just a future project in the CIP. Also, in the CIP in a future year, the curve here is a bit tight, so looking to straighten out the curve a little bit there in that area of Huntersville Concord Road and improve that area of Huntersville Concord right there. Then also Walters Street, so improving Walters Street in its current location, and then also extending Walters Street up to the Vermilion development there. Those are currently the projects that are, again, those last three are in a future year in the current CIP. Board determines what projects get funded and then in what year. So that's a list of what's coming on the town side. The state does have another project in their draft CIP, or STIP, I'm sorry, to widen Gilead Road between kind of where the other project stops, all the way to 115. That project in the latest version of the draft STIP is slated for construction start in 2029. And that's the information I have on transportation projects. Does anybody have any questions on those?
21 going north is being four-laned from Gilead Road, is that correct?
That's correct. So the 21 Gilead project takes it up to Arahova right now. The next phase, kind of off the page, so from here north all the way up to Holly Point Drive.
Okay.
That project is currently in right-of-way acquisition. They'll probably be doing that for a couple of years. And then construction start 2025, 2026.
Okay, thank you.
There's more projects off the page, but that's just the ones that are right here on the map.
I have a question. If it's gonna be widened all the way down to Holly Drive, that means also to Stumptown Road. And with the Stumptown Road extension, could the town direct traffic, 21 north, take a right on Stumptown to get to the east side of town?
Stumptown is, off the map. As far as directing traffic there, I don't know that there's a plan to direct traffic that way, but 21 will be improved, and then Stumptown Extension Project is partially funded right now. That'll be another alternative.
Is that a 2025 year estimate or 6?
Right now, the project estimate on that in the CIP is $10 million for the Stumptown Extension Project. 1.4 million of that project has been funded so far to date.
Go ahead.
I just had a question regarding Gilead and Commerce. Do you know if a bus stop will remain in that location when the road changes?
Not sure. Bobby, do you have anything on bus stops?
Yeah, I've not heard anything about changing stops. I know Katz is kind of looking at everything in North Bethlehem right now. So there are likely some changes. I don't know if any of that could be attributed to any of the projects specifically, or Katz just refining what they've got up here. But I think there's definitely some sensitivity to bus stops impacts.
Okay.
Could you tell me about the median on Church Street?
So as part of the Main Street project, here at Church Street, right at Huntersville Concord Road. So there'll be a concrete median on Huntersville Concord Road that will prohibit anything but a right in, right out from Church Street in either direction.
Oh, okay.
So there'll be a median across Huntersville Concord. So if you're on Church Street, you got to turn right into or out of.
Okay.
That's the only choice.
So to follow up on what Elaine was saying about redirecting traffic coming off of the interstate up 21 to Stumptown Road when the crossing
Correct.
across the railroad happens, seems to me a logic thing since they're gonna close down Raymond Church Road at the railroad. At least that was the plan as I understood it. There would be no crossing of the railroad between 73 and Huntersville Concord Road.
Right.
There would still be McCord Road.
Well, McCord Road is just slightly below Stumptown. I mean, 73.
73.
Yeah, you're right, it would be. That's still over.
There'll be also 4th Street. Yeah, I was trying to think of the rest. Yeah, 4th Street. 4th Street will also have an at-grade crossing, which is closer to Huntersville Concord.
Well, so I still think what Elaine was, I believe, asking, as I understood it, to redirect traffic coming off the interstate that wants to go east, that it be directed off of Gilead Road, but onto
That's what I was-
Stumptown and
Right.
across
Exactly.
the crossing when that happens.
And
I will say one thing that was in the last downtown plan that we never really did was wayfinding and kind of having signage out there, directional signage to get to amenities, to get to parts of town. I think that is probably something for you guys as a committee to look at the consultants and look at these challenges with transportation and everything else. What's the wayfinding system need to be? And that's a place where I think we'd be looking for your input and guidance.
I think also that, in my mind, the plus to Stumptown and the widening of 21 for all of the subdivisions east, and there are 10 of them currently, more to come. But that's a great way to avoid this massive intersection here for folks going to North Cross, Burkdale, all of that. You go through Stumptown, 21, and straight up. Yeah, and it just saves you time. So the sooner the better for that.
I just want to say, Colin, following up on Lane's comment and Stephen saying we're not necessarily going to direct them, but my comment would be, if there is not improvements here and it's hard to get through this intersection, people are going to make the choice to go the easiest way around. And so I tend to agree. I think as if it stays clogged up, then, and I can get now Stumptown and get across and get into Northstone in my subdivision, then that might be a good alternative. So thank you.
Well, we could always put some yard signs out there at Gilead and 21 and say, you want a short, take a short way home.
Right.
John?
There's no opportunities or no way that Stumptown can be fast-tracked?
Well, it'll depend on funding. And
Who
so,
would that funding have to come from? State, federal, or who?
The town.
well,
Or the town?
currently, Stumptown Road is not on the federal aid system.
So it's a state,
So-
it's a county road,
So,
state road?
so there's not one answer to that question. So right now, Stumptown Road is not on the federal aid system. A road has to be on the federal aid system to be eligible to receive federal dollars for a project. A portion of Stumptown Road, so Stumptown Road to the west of 115 is actually a town-maintained road. Stumptown Road that connects between Aberfeld and Rama Church is a state-maintained road. The current plan for Stumptown, the extension part, so going from Aberfeld up to 115, would be that it would be a state-maintained road. That's the current plan.
Any other questions, comments? Thank you. Appreciate it.
John, that will be one of the projects on the bonds next November.
For the town to
That's
get.
where the funding is anticipated from is the bonds.
For Stumptown?
Yeah, that voters will get to approve or consider next November.
And if it's passed, what we'll be looking at for construction on that?
I mean, probably would sell bonds that spring, so voters approving.
23.
If voters approve the bonds next November, that following spring, we would probably sell some of the first bonds to start paying for these transportation projects that are shovel-ready, need money to get going.
Yeah, so right now we're working, I guess, just the schedule-wise on Stumptown, or we're working on wrapping up the environmental document on that project. Then we'll move into design. That'll probably take about a year. We have the railroad crossing. Working with railroads, it's typically not a quick process. So that will take some time. Then we also have a good bit of property acquisition to do. That'll probably take at least a year to do. So we're several years out. Even if we had the money today, we are several years out from beginning construction on that project, assuming money was there. But we don't have the money yet, so we can only go but so far.
I have another question. With the state, you said construction is supposed to begin in 2029 for widening Gilead. Is there a point at which, a point of no return? Like, is there a date, if the town were going to try to take over Gilead or change something, how much time do we have?
It's a great question. One, there's, to me, many assumptions in that. Right now, it's on the schedule to let for construction in 2029. Don't know if that will hold, if that'll get delayed. Probably not moved up a whole lot, I would guess, just based on the current funding of NCDOT. So sometime between now and then, I'd say the sooner that the town makes a decision that they do or don't want that project, I'd say the better for all.
Good evening, everybody. I'd like to tell a quick story, very quick. I know I ain't got much time. So I started working here in 1999. I remember my first week working here, and my supervisor called me over to town hall to talk about the events I'd be responsible for. And She sends me this flyer, I'm looking at it, and I said, okay, I see the date and the time, and it says downtown Huntersville, no lie. I'm from Florida. I said, I don't know, where's downtown Huntersville? So I've seen a lot has happened in those 23 years, a lot of good things. So I'd just like to say that there's a lot has changed, a lot of good things have happened. I use a lot of pictures, so this is like a 3-year-old coloring book with a bunch of pictures, but downtown has changed a lot when it comes to Parks and Rec and activities and amenities and programs that we do downtown. So I kind of highlight some of that and talk about some of our future vision and some of the things that we're kind of wrapping up downtown. But you know, some of these pictures, when the town builds stuff, Parks and Rec people look at things differently. We've seen a parking deck go up. We're like, oh, this can be a car show. We could do movies on the deck. So we look at things differently than maybe what the practical use was for them. So looking at programming, we're not just looking at parks, we always look at other spaces that might lend itself to be a good location for events. So these are just some pictures of the car shows. This is Huntsville Christmas with the Christmas tree at Veterans Park on stage. I think this is from Veterans Day, and obviously the nighttime view of Veterans Park, I always love capturing that as well. So public art, and I know John's probably shared, last 3 or 4 years, public art's been a big focus of ours. And so there's been about $120,000 worth of public art in downtown that has been all sponsorships and donations. And one of the biggest ones that will be coming by the end of the year is this 17-foot vine structure that will be at the trailhead of the downtown Greenway. So we're excited about that. But also part of that is, you know, some of the history, some of the history of downtown with ice block to represent the Ice House stage with the bricks and a little placard to explain that. And also Benny that does the yard art down the street. Now that's at Holbrook Park, so that was a place where we kind of do rotational pieces. Benches, for a while there was no benches for the bus stops, so public art was the first committee to actually provide places to sit at bus stops. And then the mural just went up a couple of weeks ago, and then Atrium did the pieces over at Discovery Place. And also there's other art pieces such as the airplane that was made out of like car parts. And then Mr. Ginyard allowed an artist to do a mural on one of his fences. So there's people don't realize it, but there's a lot of different art downtown that you can kind of walk around and take a look at. And that will tend to be a focus of ours. But we're also trying to focus outside of downtown, but that has been our main focus. We also are about to send out a request for proposals for a Sculpt tour. And the idea is that we already got partial funding for that, is actually have pieces of art along the new Greenway. So it's another attraction to get on the trail, another place to come and check out with your family and so forth, and take some selfies and TikTok videos and all that stuff. Small touches, so some of the things we do, people now are expecting it. It's kind of became a tradition. It's probably been about 5 years ago we started doing the Field of Honor. Originally it was at Veterans Park. And with the construction, the last 2 years we've done 2 locations. You'll be amazed at people who just will pull up and take pictures between the flags and take pictures of their families. So now, you know, if we don't get those up September 1st, September 2nd, people are contacting us, why aren't the flags up yet? So some of these small things that you don't think about, but people look forward to it every year, as well as some of our events. You know, small snowflakes, we've done big Christmas ornament balls on the plaza one year. So some of these small things to attract people. And also, when we started doing our Veterans Day parade, we have a Grand Marshal every year. So now what we do is we order a banner. We order 2 banners. We give them one to the family, and we put one on the post. We had to take one down, I don't know, about 6 or 8 months ago because of construction. I think it might have been a week later, Stacey Phillips got a call from somebody, where's my grandfather's flag at? So people look for that stuff. And so it kind of means something to the community. So bringing that tie to the community and what's going on downtown. And I remember years ago, we had to fight to just get one Christmas tree. Well, when we moved the Christmas tree to Veterans Park from Town Plaza, because the Christmas tree lighting was getting so big, police department didn't feel safe having it here, so we moved to Veterans Park. Well, then everybody wanted to know where was the Christmas tree. Well, the next year, now we got 2 Christmas trees. So some of these small things that you hear from the community and what they want, we try to do our best to accommodate. And also, I would say that this red caboose, I've seen on social media, artists come down and do watercolors of the caboose, do pictures of, you know, sketches of the caboose. I've seen people on Facebook, their Christmas photos with their family, backdrop of the caboose, I mean, political campaign videos, caboose. So I think it's became an attraction in itself as well. So Holbrook Park, I mean, I don't know if everybody's familiar with Holbrook Park, it's about 8 acres. A new greenway comes through it, but it's one of those parks that gets tons of use, and I would say, by adding this any tennis players in here? Okay, good. The pickleball courts were probably the best decision we made because it gets tons of use, draws a lot of people. Now, there's been some parking challenges, but with the school parking lot, so that's really the big change with the park. Also replaced the playground a few years ago and so forth, but this has become a real attraction for the community to come in. Nice shaded park, people enjoy it, and it's getting easier to get to. Now, don't pay much attention to this. This is from 2011, so our goal in our last 2 Parks Rec master plans was look for opportunities to expand Holbrook Park, because once you lose those opportunities, you're not going to come back. And so by looking at that, back in 2011, we're doing our plan. We had a company who was just getting started, did a quick sketch for us. Was like, okay, if some opportunity came available and we're able to get these 2 parcels along Gilead Road, south of Holbrook Park, what are some things we can put in there? Also, we always hear about splash pads. It's one of the #1 community amenities we hear that people want. So this is just a sketch of some active activity up on Gilead Road, but also having open space, keeping a lot of trees and so forth. Now, of course, this is not town property anymore, so that has changed. And also, we've been focusing on this whole rectangle. If these properties became available, another opportunity to expand Holbrook Park. And I know as part of this plan, this is some of the space that could be used for retention, bioretention, and stormwater and so forth as well. So our goal is, this could potentially be a 16-acre park in the middle of downtown Huntersville. So as you look at other downtowns, I don't think many of them have an opportunity like we have that has this much tree camping in the middle of town that can be saved as part of a park. So that's really been, those opportunities come up, we'd like to try to jump on those. So that's really been one of our vision, is to have a larger park downtown that will be more passive activity. I mentioned about downtown events. So back when I first got here, we used to do 2 events downtown. Well, we only did one of them. The other one was a nonprofit group. Huntersville Christmas was done downtown, and then Hello Huntersville was more driven to businesses. That was done by volunteers. Now we do about 32 events downtown. Most of them are Veterans Park. Of course, our biggest events are Huntersville Christmas, where we do shut roads down. Hello Huntersville, we also shut the roads down. And then Veterans Day Parade ceremony, which is, I think, going into our 7th year. So it's still a newer event, but the parade's growing every year. And the rest of our events are more just centered in the Veterans Park. And most of those events, you're talking 100, 200, 300 people. And we do a lot of variety of those events. And they're smaller events. It gives you more feel of downtown. So between a Lollapalooza series, with jazz series, unfortunately Latino night is canceled tomorrow night, but it's been rescheduled. So we try to do a lot of variety of activities, and also having small touches to those events. Howdy Huntersville, we had a bull riding. You could ride the bull. You could do your own horse. I don't know what they call those things, a little horse seat with on a stick or whatever you call those things. But trying to do some variety of activities to bring people back out, axe throwing and so forth. Movies in the parks have been a big hit as well, so we're trying to hit all the different ages as well. And so greenways, last year, just over a year ago, the first section of the downtown greenway through Holbrook Park was completed. And this is the raised plan where that 17-foot vine art piece will be going. In about 2 weeks, this section here will officially be open. I've seen on Facebook people walking, taking pictures of the dog. Hey, the greenway's open. It's not really open. But the bridge is up and the railings are up, so can't fall off the bridge. So we plan on probably the next 3 or 4 weeks probably have our official ribbon cutting for the Phase 2 Greenway, which gets you to Commerce Center Drive. But once again, a lot of shade. A lot of times when you build greenways, you put swells on both sides so water's not sheet flowing across the trail, because it does help with maintenance. As you can tell here, we narrow that thing about as tight as you can and still try to get the water to drain from the trail. So a lot of times, new greenways will be clear cut, wide paths, wide swaths through the middle of town. And I think it was a challenge, but you'll be surprised if you walk that trail how much shade it is and how narrow it is with the tree canopy around the sides. And then this is the bridge that goes over the little creek there.
Michael, can you make Mecklenburg County do that in the Clark Creek Greenway? Going all the way through Vermillion to Asbury Chapel?
I can't make them do anything.
I really, clear cutting such a huge swath, and in most cases, it'll follow the sewer. So,
I'm gonna be honest with you, one of the challenges too is when we've learned this, is a lot of times the trees you do save, you squeeze it, you have to end up coming back, taking some of them down. And then, once again, it's from a long-term maintenance, it's better to have those swells on the side, keeps the water off the trail. But like I said, in this case, we heard it, we want to try to keep as much as we can.
Can you locate the bridge for me?
Actually, on the next slide, bridge is about right here.
Before you get to Commerce Drive?
Yes, yep, it's right before you get there. So this shows you, this is Holbrook Park, so this is the trail coming through, and this is the piece that'll be completed right here. And this right here is part of that road project that Stephen was talking about. And then this is crossing that grade now, and I think Dave shared last meeting that applying for a CRTPO grant, which will allow that trail to go under 21. And so, keep our fingers crossed all that turns out good and we can get under 21. But based on 21 being done 2.5, 3 years, Mecklenburg County is gonna break ground on this section in December. It's about 18 months, so this should be done in 18 months, which gets you to the current Torrance Creek Greenway that goes down under Gilead and into Cedarfield. And so really in the next 3 years, you'll be able to go downtown all the way out to the west side of Cedarfield, the new parking lot. The parking lot is for the trailhead. So you're talking thousands of homes, maybe a 10, 15-minute bike ride into downtown. Well, at first you'll have to cross 21, but maybe 2028, 29, that tunnel goes under, then you don't have to cross 21. So I think it makes it more convenient for people to get downtown and have to get in their car, make it half a day of it, drive downtown, hang out at the park, go to DPK, have some lunch and so forth. I think that is all I have.
Michael, the bridge under I-77, previously they talked about having art under there where it might be like a lighting system that might, as you walk through, the lights kind of walk through. Is that still?
So yes, there's been a lighting plan already approved that's going to go in, but it's not one that actually follows you. It's more stationary type stuff. It's not going to follow, but it's be lit up. Yeah. It's like, the lights are kind of supposed to reflect the creeks that flow through this area. That was the vision that the artists used, that they went with. That's something we can share with the group and send to everybody.
It's just something unusual to go under that in the evening time. So I mean, it's very exciting to see this kind of connection of, two sides of I-77 to get you right to downtown.
And that's fortunate too. You think about having the opportunity to go across or under 77 and not be with traffic. Not many communities can say they're able to do that as well. So, but if it wasn't for a long-term plan a long time ago, showing that crossing, it would never happen. Sometimes things don't happen quickly, but it's good to have a plan so when something does happen, you get what you need.
when you talked about connecting the park to Gilead Road, the one, you don't want to lose either Miss Jones or Miss Mayberry's house. I think it's Miss Mayberry's is vacant right now. And if Dan Morrill was up here, he'd tell you that the garage is historic, and he'd tell you the chicken coop back there is historic, where the tree fell on. So I think, buying it for the town and making it part of the park and coming up with a use for it. But, it's clearly one of the houses that should not be raised.
And what location are you talking about now? Where?
It's the two, you can go back up to that slide.
Second house back this way from the school.
Yeah.
That was,
Miss Mayberry's house there.
Right, Mayberry.
Yeah.
The other was, not.
I mean, they were a fixture
They were.
for years.
It was all one building at one time.
Okay.
Two houses.
Really?
They were sisters.
That was the school.
As a college?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a big part of our history, so
Yeah.
incorporating it into the park would be great.
I mean, if the town was to ever buy the land, we'll go through a whole master plan process.
Right, I was just,
Yeah.
while you were talking about it.
I have a question. What is
Has
the,
a bond issue for that.
yeah, what's the process to get like murals on buildings? And then who pays to maintain them once they're done?
Well, typically it would go through the Public Art Committee, make a recommendation, then that will go to the town board, which has the final decision making. So I mean, if, obviously you would have, if it's on town property, the town will maintain it. So like all the art pieces that are on our property, we maintain them. We wouldn't, well, we currently don't maintain art on property that's not the town. Or if it's not leased by, like parks that we have, if some of our parks, we don't have, some of our parks were leased from the county. They're like 50-year leases that we maintain the park. So if we put art on county land, we would still maintain it. But right now, everything downtown, the parkland downtown is actually town-owned land. Our bigger parks are owned by the county that we lease.
Any other questions? Comments? Thank you, Michael. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Jack, some of those?
Thank you and good evening, everyone. I want to introduce Heather Maloney over there in the corner. Heather is our long-range transportation planner, and her and NCDOT are going to be best friends in the coming years.
I wasn't offered that drink in the kitchen.
Heather has actually reached out to Matthews because it was mentioned that there's a DOT project in Matthews that they are now questioning. It's going to mess up our downtown. So she is starting the conversation with Matthews and sharing information. So she will help us greatly in the downtown plan as well as the other plans that we have in there. The other thing I want to say is happy birthday to Mr. Charles Gignard, and Sarah McCauley had a birthday yesterday, my understanding. So I wish you, yes, happy birthday. Now to this really boring stuff, the zoning rules and regulations. So I'm going to be talking. The way the agenda has been set up is talk about the zoning in land development and as it applies particularly to downtown, and then getting on to some of the survey questions that were asked. Okay, so that's kind of the two parts that I'm going to deal with. Before I start talking about zoning in downtown, one of the questions in the survey is what area should we study? So I guess the ones that came up most were a quarter mile and a half mile. This happens to be a map that we had for the very first meeting back in November of 2021, and the inner circle is your quarter mile, and then goes out to a half mile, and then we had the 3/4 and the 1 mile. So the town board and us, we want to concentrate on the quarter mile in particular, but the half mile in general. And I will just say, I went back and looked at the 1995 Huntersville Community Plan, and they put a little asterisk at what they call the downtown, and it matches up almost exactly with the half mile spacing. So that's kind of what has been historically thought of as kind of the boundaries of the downtown. So what I want to do is start with, zoning. You don't just zone stuff because you have the right to do it from the state of North Carolina. You have a plan. What's your vision? What do you want to achieve? What do you want to do? So in 1995, Huntersville had a community plan done for the entire jurisdiction at that point in time. And that long-range vision said we want downtown to be mixed use and walkable, and areas outside the core is rural and pastoral views protected. We want the buildings to all front a street or open space, connected streets with one another, sidewalks on both sides of the street, et cetera. So these were the things that were listed in the vision for 1995. So in 1996, the town of Huntersville adopted zoning and subdivision regulations to make them a requirement. So again, you have the vision, and then once that vision is adopted by your town board, then you change your development regulations to achieve that vision. This happens to be the map of the zoning map at that time when all the zones were changed. Was that your cricket on that thing? Okay. What I want to point out here is, all right, so here's downtown, there's exit 23, this Gilead Road. This is all red area, that's just town center. And so, the vision was to have a mixed use downtown. So that town center, gosh, that district allows everything from commercial to residential to even some light manufacturing. If somebody want a candlestick maker or, anything like that could be allowed in that zoning district. So again, I just make the tie-in. You have the vision, and then you develop the codes to comply with that vision and help achieve that vision. So I want to talk about the 2005 plan that we had, and some of the vision that was established at that point in time, and just talk to you about changes we had to make to the zoning ordinance to deal with that. So under the top one, key recommendation for the town center area was to require buildings within 800 feet of the intersection of Gilead and Old Statesville Road, NC 115, to be a minimum of 2 stories. So that was a recommendation that came out of the 2005 plan. So we had to amend our zoning ordinance, and we did, and this is actually the section of the ordinance that actually did that, and it says the minimum height. So mixed use, storefront, workplace buildings, new construction shall be a minimum of 2 stories along the fronts of Gilead from Sherwood to Old Statesville, Huntersville Concord from Old Statesville to Main Street, Old Statesville 400 feet north to the intersection of Gilead, Huntersville Concord Road to Greenway Drive, and Main Street from Huntersville Concord to Greenway. Basically, again, looking at 2 stories. So just kind of having the kind of intensity and density that is desired in a downtown. Not too dense, 2-story, but still more than 1-story, low intensity. Next recommendation, key recommendation for the Mill neighborhood. Remove the manufactured home overlay zoning district from the Mill Village and consider zoning the area for transit-oriented development, TODR, to encourage high-quality urban infill. So this happens to be the zoning map that was in effect at that time. So here is 115, here is Gilead, Huntersville Concord Road, and there was this MHO, mobile home overlay. So that's where, a number of mobile homes were at, and that would allow mobile homes to be put onto that property. So that recommendation was to remove the mobile home overlay, and in fact, the town rezoned that property and got rid of the mobile home overlay. You notice it doesn't show we didn't rezone it for transit-oriented development. The reason is there was, back in 03, 04, 05, there was tremendous, I guess, activity of, the train's gonna be coming, it's gonna be happening. Brighton got rezoned for transit-oriented development, but there wasn't that pressure up here. And now, as we all know, the train is out there if it's coming at all, and so there would be no need to rezone it to TOD because there's no train coming anytime soon for the higher intensity. So I just want to point that out. Going down to the key recommendation for the Gateway Corridor. So as you're coming in, this was particularly on Gilead Road. The plan recommends mixed-use requirement be removed to permit single-use occupancy of building. What was that getting at? As you're coming off the interstate and you're coming into downtown, there's some nice houses along that roadway. But Gilead Road isn't quite the best single-family residential. It's wonderful, but it also could be a business. And so what the recommendation is to allow homes to be built but have all businesses in there, okay? And so there was a text amendment in that regard as well. And so what happened in the neighborhood residential zone, which happens to be the zoning as you're coming in and you see the houses, it allows a commercial use, but in a detached style building within a quarter mile of the town center zoning district. And in fact, the orthodontist office that you see as you're coming in from downtown or from the interstate is one example. I could have shown Charles examples, but Charles was the first to take advantage of that, but to have all commercial businesses that maintain a residential appearance. So again, I'm just simply tying in that when you have a plan, that's step one, and then you gotta go and you gotta make changes to your codes to help achieve the things that you want to achieve. So just very, very quickly, if this plan comes out and we have to do some rezoning, maybe that's a possibility. The start would be with the planning department and filing the application. Then we'll take the rezoning up to the planning board, who will make a recommendation on that rezoning, and then it goes to the town board for ultimate action. So that's the vetting process that has to happen. There's a joint public hearing between the planning board and town board, but ultimately the planning board makes a recommendation. Town board ultimately decides on to approve or to deny. If it's a text amendment, so there were a number of text amendments that we had to do as a result of the 05 plan, The first thing that happens, it goes to the Huntersville Ordinances Advisory Board. So they hear all zoning and subdivision text amendments. They're going to make a recommendation. It's going to go to the planning board. They're going to make a recommendation that's going to go up to the town board for action. So there's a lot of vetting. There are public hearings involved. So things can get modified and changed as it goes through these processes, but that's the process that would go through for the rezoning or a text amendment. So I show this here. This shows about the half-mile radius, and that represents about 1% of our 63 square miles. So it's not a very, very big area, but that is kind of the downtown as it sits in relation to all the 63 square miles in downtown. So now we're kind of zooming in, and what I want to do is share with you some of the zoning regulations that apply in the downtown, and key on some of the districts that are much larger than others. So we start with the town center. I showed you that previously from back when 1996, when they rezoned this area. This is the town center zone. We have a neighborhood residential. That's the other large area. That's kind of the darker yellow. And then we have general residential, GR. So what that was subdivisions that were pre-1996. They were zoned general residential, so those are single family and single family only. The neighborhood residential have a multiple uses, and I'll explain that in just a few moments. We also have some traditional neighborhood development, TND. We have on the outskirts, as you're coming off the interstate on Gilead, there's a lot of highway commercial, and then also on 115, there's a little bit of highway commercial as well. And then we have some neighborhood center, which is smaller scale commercial, and I'll explain that as well. So those are the zones that we have in the downtown area as it exists today. So if we talk about the town center zoning, the zoning ordinance sets what uses could be in these, anywhere where the red is, okay? So anywhere where you see the red, excuse me, I wanted to point out that those white circles there, so these are properties that have, since the 1996 official town center zoning, these have been added. These are town center. This is Vermilion Village. This is the North State. You see this CD, that means it's conditional district. That's what a developer says, I want this project approved and I'm willing to accept these conditions. And you'll also notice that over here where Brian Hines and Jay Henson had a mixed-use development, that is town's TND conditional district. So I just wanted to point out that we have had some rezonings in the relatively recent time frame, but they have CD, means there's some conditions that are on there that are peculiar to those properties. So town center zoning district. I mentioned in 1995, when the town said they wanted mixed use in their downtown. So here's all the uses that you can be permitted by right, which means if you walk in the door and you want to do these things, we will issue the permit. Bed and breakfast, inns, boarding or rooming houses up to 6 roomers, civic, fraternal, cultural, community, or club facilities, commercial uses, congregate housing designed within a civic building type, family care homes, government buildings, hotels, indoor amusement, multifamily homes, nightclubs, bars, and single-family homes. Let me go to commercial uses. That use category is A to Z. Clothing store, retail, art, I mean, any commercial, it can even include some light manufacturing. If there's artisans that are making things, that's allowed in there. That commercial use just allows a tremendous amount of offices, doctor's offices, all kinds of things. So those are uses allowed by right. Uses permitted with condition, automobile and motorcycle sales. There was a car dealership down here, right? Cemeteries, religious institutions, essential services, 1 and 2. Those are utilities, Charlotte Mecklenburg Utilities. Neighborhood gasoline station, excluding major service, so it's the Cashin's over there. Parking lot as a principal use, parks, schools, temporary mobile food sales, outdoor seasonal agricultural products, transit-oriented parking lots, and transit shelters. All those things are allowed. And these little numbers that are over here, if you go online and you look this stuff up, you can actually click on the number and it'll tell you what kind of conditions there are on that. Accessory uses, this is an important thing to point out. Accessory dwellings. So in Huntersville, since basically 1996, if you own a home and you want to put a little cottage in the backyard for your family or your son, or you could even rent it out, that's an accessory dwelling. So that's been allowed since 1996. Small daycare, which is six people or less. Here's an interesting one. Drive-through windows excluding associated with restaurants. Okay? So, if McDonald's wanted to come in downtown Huntersville, we could not stop them, but we would not issue the permit for the drive-through window. And they're not gonna, they make so much money. They're not gonna do that. However, if Walgreens wanted to come downtown, that would be allowed. If a bank wanted to come downtown, you could do that drive-through window. So that's an important one to point out. Home occupation, so if you have a house, you can do your home business there. This talks about some solar energy facilities. Here's an interesting one. Stalls or merchandise stands for the outdoor sale of goods at the street front. Encroachment onto the sidewalk may be permitted. Outdoor storage expressly prohibited. So what that in essence is saying is, if I have a business, I can spill out onto the sidewalk, sell some goods, but at the end of the day, I need to bring it in. So it's not outdoor storage, which is a good thing, right? I mean, especially since the pandemic, everybody is spilling outdoors. So, so that's a good thing. And then, let's see. So that's kind of the accessory uses. So I talked about the permitted uses, the uses permitted with conditions, the accessory uses, and now we start talking about, okay, well, I want to do a development in the town center zone. What are the general requirements? So what the ordinance says under number 1, that starts to talk about how the buildings need to blend in with the surroundings. It says, along existing streets, new buildings shall respect the general spacing of structures, building mass, scale, street frontage relationship of existing buildings. And then the first bullet says new buildings which adhere to it, then they demonstrate compatibility. So if I got a 2-story building proposed and it's next to a 2-story building, it works. Then it goes on to say new buildings which exceed the scale volume of existing buildings may demonstrate compatibility by varying the massing of the building, reduce the perceived scale volume. So, there's architecturally, there's some things you can do to modify a building to make it fit into the area. So that's under the general requirements. The last bullet talks about how we can't conflict with the state statutes for for residential type homes, for 1 and 2 story or 1 and 2 family dwellings. So that's just not allowed. Let's see. On allowable building types will be established the development pattern. New subdivisions. Here's a key one. Major subdivisions, planned development, the aggregate number of dwelling units contained in attached houses, apartment buildings, mixed-use buildings shall not exceed 30% of the total number of dwelling units in a project. So, what does that mean? If I've got a large enough piece of land that I need streets and storm drainage through there, it's going to be a major subdivision. If I have a major subdivision and I have 10 lots out of it, only 3 of them could be attached. The rest of them have to be detached. So that's what that rule gets at, right? So that's kind of limiting the intensity and density that's allowed. So that's a key provision. New construction favors retail on the first floor, office and residential, or residential on the upper floors. Every building has to front upon a street or open space. If anybody saw the plan that was over here, there were commercial buildings in this particular area, then they had townhomes fronting Gilead, and then they had townhomes that were facing inward of a little courtyard, so they're all facing a little open space. So, I mean, it's a really interesting design, so that's what that allows, that type of thing to happen. And then, again, this is the thing that talks about you have to have 2 stories kind of in this particular area right in here. It needs to have 2 stories. So those are the standards that apply if you want to do in town center. And what I just X'd out here is there used to be a provision that was changed by the town board that said if you're within a 1/4 mile of a transit station, a planned transit station, and there was one right in this area right here, that you could have 100% attached. So that has been removed because transit's not coming anytime soon. Last thing I'm talking about in town center is the building types. So we control, the zoning regulations control the building types. First one, an apartment building is allowed in downtown. So it's up to 36 foot high, so that's basically 3 stories. Okay, so you can have a 3-story apartment building. The next one is attached and detached house. That could go to 30 feet high. Those are allowed. There's also some standards on your garage, and again, you can have a residence in that garage if you want as an accessory structure. Next one is civic buildings. So we've got some churches in downtown, so in schools, so that can go up to 4 stories in the downtown area. And then we go to mixed-use building and storefront building. Now, notice it says up to 50,000 square feet. So that's your footprint, 50,000 square. So could Walmart come down here? Yes, but it'd have to be 50,000 square feet, and they build 120, 130,000 square feet. So, that wouldn't work for them. So what it says here is if you have these, the residents can occupy up to 50% of the first floor, but the rest has got to be non-residential or it's all non-residential. So that's the code. There's a conditional zoning for North State across the street next to town center, and they got a reduction of that through the rezoning, and that's going to be a point of discussion at Monday night's town board meeting. That building can go up to 48 feet tall. So you can get a 4-story building. So your apartment is 3 stories, your mixed-use building is 4 stories, but you need to have at least 50% commercial in the downstairs, unless you get it approved by the town board for some kind of rezoning. And the last one is a workplace building. Again, that's a 50,000 square foot. Those get to be much bigger buildings, the workplace type building, in terms of total square footage. And again, you can have residential up to 50% on the first floor, and then the rest can be residential or non-residential. Above that, that's 45 foot high. So basically you got 4 stories. So again, if you go to this zoning district here, the TC zone, I've kind of gone over this. It goes in one ear and out the other if you're like me. So I gave you this attachment so you can kind of follow along if you choose to. But I just wanted to play a scenario out to you, and it's just. This was the consultant's proposal, a composite alternative future that we're going to start discussion on next week, right? So let's just say, and for argument purposes, this is what comes out of the developer or the consultant proposes this plan, and staff and steering committee and citizens say, okay, this works. Notice this says 4 to 6 stories, 4 to 6 stories. So the question would be, well, what would have to change? If this gets adopted, what's going to have to change? Well, because those areas contain over 4 stories, we would have to change the zoning regulations for the building height. So that would be one example of what would have to be done. Another example is up here in this area, that happens to be zone town center, but that's calling for 3 to 4 story residential. Today it's town center, so it allows commercial and residential, and it allows residential at 3 stories. So that's just one little snippet of an example of whenever this plan ultimately gets adopted, we are going to have to make some adjustments to the code, whatever it might be. Okay. Neighborhood residential, all this yellow stuff right in here. Uses are bed and breakfast, boarding, rooming house, congregate housing, family care homes, multifamily homes, single-family homes. Uses with conditions, I'm not going to get into those details, but I will point out that we allow mixed-use buildings that look like a residence. So if you notice over here where the Allen orthodontist office was, it happens to have been zoned residential, but it's on a major thoroughfare. It's within a quarter mile of the downtown. Charles's buildings are right in here. Those also have a residential appearance and are all commercial, so they've taken advantage of that provision that the town has in there. There was also, I would point out, this is the mixed use of that Jay Henson and Brian Hines controlled. That again is a separate zone. That's a town center zoning or TND zone, so that does not comply with these neighborhood residential districts. Again, has the same general requirements as you find in the town center zone. Again, the town board took out that if you're within a quarter mile of a transit station, you can have 100% attached, so that no longer is there. And then the building types are, again, apartments, attached to detached house, civic building, and then you can have a mixed-use building, but your footprint of your building is 3,000 square feet, so it's not that big. The house is big, but for a business, it's not that big. And so there's your neighborhood residential, and all those different uses could go in there. Neighborhood center, these are the smaller areas right here. And again, I'm not going to read these, but they allow commercial uses. And the footprint of the building is 6,000 square foot, so it's a smaller type of building that you have. So you have the agenda packet. It's got the information in there. I know this stuff is kind of boring, and having said that, I do want to kind of give you a sense of some other zoning regulations and just kind of put it in the context of what's happening in all of Huntersville. So 1990, the population was 3,000 people. I mean, imagine that. We're at 60 some odd thousand today. So the zoning jurisdiction boundaries was really small. It was kind of right in this area back then. The 1995 plan mentioned that the town said we adopt this plan, and then that resulted in the 1996 zoning ordinance, and that created the regulations that your buildings have to front a street, and you can front open space. The streets can be connected. In 1997, the town expanded their zoning jurisdiction, and now it's all 63 square miles. I will point out that out in these areas right in here, out in the eastern side by Davidson, Cabarrus, and Charlotte, it was zoned what's called OPS, Open Space District. That district allowed 2.5 units an acre with 15% open space. So if I had a 100-acre tract of land, I'd have 250 homes and 15 acres of open space. Okay? And that was the same rule that was on the western side as well. 2000 population went up to 24,960. And this happens to show out on Beatty's Ford Road the type of development that OPS zone was creating. And I will say this, I came in 2001, and there was a tremendous backlash of the development that was happening out in that area. And so the town board in 2002 put a moratorium on development and updated the Huntersville Community Plan and then revamped the zoning ordinance. So 2002, 2003, the updated plan was done and basically kept the same vision for higher intensity development along I-77 115 corridor, but lower the density in the eastern and western edges. So that 100-acre tract of land that could have 250 units and 15 acres of open space if it was rural, which is the very eastern and western side, you can have 0.9 units an acre, so 90 homes instead of 250, and you would have 45 acres of open space instead of 15 acres of open. So that was downzoned, and then we had TR, so that's kind of transitional. That was 1.5 units an acre, so that 100-acre land could have 150 homes with 40% open space, 40 acres of open space. And well, Sarah, you were here at that time, and the public hearing was held at Central Piedmont Community College. Bob, remember? It was the most respectful meeting I've ever heard. I mean, it was no booing, no hissing, it was unbelievable that this kind of change happened, this downzoning happened without people, pitchforks trying to burn you out of the building. That's a huge change that happened, and the intent was to kind of lower the intensity in the eastern and western side, but still focus it in the core area here. The town also adopted lighting standards, tree preservation standards, and water quality standards. And I do need to talk about water quality standards because that's a big part of our downtown plan. So let me just try to give you an overview of what's happening here. This happens to be the Mcdowell Creek watershed. It goes all the way up into Cornelius and also encompasses part of Huntersville downtown. So the water comes here, drains all out here into Mcdowell Creek Cove, and there's a drinking water source right in here. In 2003, when we changed the code in downzone, we also adopted this low impact LID to address the impaired streams, a moratorium on a wastewater plant, and protect the downstream drinking water supply. So at that point in time, the number of impaired streams, 63% of the streams in Huntersville were classified as impaired at that point in time. And so according to EPA. And again, we have a wastewater treatment plant here and a drinking water here, and that caused issues. This was Mcdowell Creek Basin after a half-inch of rain. Look at all the sediment that's come out and the scouring that occurred with the rush of stormwater. The moratorium on the wastewater plant was a very, very, I mean, you talk about putting a damper on development, you just, no sewer connections, that does it. So the state placed a moratorium on that plant till, why would we allow that plant to be expanded when all this pollution is happening with the development that's happening now? We expand the plant, you're just gonna keep doing that development. So that was a huge issue that was facing the town. And then the drinking water supply downstream from that was being threatened. So all of those things came together and the town adopted this LID. And simply put, it's just taking the stormwater and removing the pollutants out of it, right? So it used to be where you would just collect the volume of water that comes off and then release that volume, but now you're doing the volume in the quality of the water as well. And this is just, these little things are engineered to get the pollutants out. So the town did that, and then because the town did that, Mecklenburg County said, okay, you guys are gonna stop the pollutants from the new development. We need to retrofit and fix these streams on the existing places where we already have problems. And so this map just shows areas of creeks that they have done restoration on. Here's an example of a retrofit at North Cross, where they approached the shopping center and all the folks that have out parcels, and they were able to put in little stormwater ponds. There's an example of it. Formerly, that oils would come off and go right into the creek system, and now they go into this, and then through this engineered system, those pollutants are removed. There's a stream restoration. That's Torrance Tributary number 1, and that's what it looks like afterwards. And bottom line, our population grew tremendously from 2000. This point's up to 2014, we're at 51,000. But in the end, our water quality is actually getting better. Our surface water quality is getting better, right? So that's a big deal. If we're growing fast, but we have better water quality, surface water quality, that's an important thing. So I mention all this to say that, when we do the downtown plan, we've talked about maybe having some regional stormwater. It's not like, we don't want to repel development, say, you got to meet your stormwater on your property, and it's very hard when it's tight and small. But, finding these regional ponds to treat this water and release it is going to be very important for us. So, again, that's another component of this plan. I'm going to now transition. Is there any questions about the zoning and the things that I've gone over? And if there are later, just let me know. I don't want you to glaze over, but this kind of information came from your survey. What we asked is, what is our tree canopy in our downtown area? So in the quarter mile, we are at 41% trees, which is a pretty decent amount and that's the quarter mile. And then in the half mile, it's 50%. Now you'll note we have already taken into account developments that we've approved. So this is Vermilion Front. I know you all know where that's at. Vermilion Front, this is Vermilion Village. This is the North State. And so we knew the town had approved those, so we took that into consideration. So again, just information just for you to kind of keep in mind. You know, we heard Michael talk about wanting to have parks and have the shade. You know, that's the way you protect it. And so we like that. Here's another interesting, yes. Sir.
What's the goal in the town and the county for tree canopy?
So there isn't any for the county. There has not been any for the town. I know that City of Charlotte had a goal of trying to get to maybe 50% through the entirety of the boundary. But those are the only communities that I know, that's the only community I know of that set a goal of we want this ultimate canopy when all is said and done. So we don't have one, is the answer.
Do you think we should?
You know, I think that by zoning rural and transitional, where we require 40% open space and 45% open space, that coupled with all the public land that is controlled over to Mountain Island Lake, we're going to be in very good shape. But I dare say tree canopy in downtown it's an issue, right? It's an issue. So we're going to see what comes out of this plan. We'll see. We also have quantified exactly how much land is being used for what today. So this is just today, and it's just in that quarter-mile space. So by far, the largest land use that we have, now this is taking the land mass inside that circle, that quarter-mile circle, or quarter-mile radius, and we have 30% is residential. The next largest land use is roads. You know, you don't think about that, but that eats up a lot of space. It's the next largest land use at 14%. Commercial's 9.6. Civic is 11.1. We've got churches and schools broken out for you. Government, 11.5%. Of that, we got 4.8 in municipal buildings and 6.6 for parks and green space, and then another 23% is vacant. And then this was the tree canopy again that we mentioned previously at 41% in that particular area. So we provide this information for you. I know in the survey you were asked, well, how much commercial should we have? You know, and you know, everybody was, you know, where do you start at? Where do you start? Well, we just wanted to take a snapshot. Where are we today? And I will dare say, I think, you know, we would hope in the 20 years from now, you know, that 9%, 9.6% commercial is going to go up, and we can measure success. All right. So now we know today. We're going to have a plan. We're going to adopt it, and we hope we can move that bar up. Okay. Is that Charles got locked out? Can somebody let him in? Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. So that's the land use within the quarter mile. We did the same thing for the half mile. So obviously, the residential actually went up to 41%. Still, by far, the next largest land use other than vacant and open space is roads at 14.9, so just about 15% of roads. Commercials down to 5.2, civic 9.8, government 3.1. And so and we broke it down that way. Again, this is going to be a measuring stick, so we can use this information to determine, you know, X number of years from now, how do we do? You know, have we expanded the economic base, et cetera? So that's just, again, just some information for you. There was a specific question, number 11, that said, do you have any specific questions to staff about downtown that have not been answered? So what's the perimeter of downtown? So we talked about that. So it's a quarter mile in particular and a half mile in general. That's what we're talking about. Somebody asked us what our top 5 priorities were. If you asked Dave, he would have one thing. If you asked Jack, is what I'm going to tell you. One, I would say the priority is get the plan adopted, because right now, I don't think folks are satisfied with what's happening. And so if we can get a plan adopted, that would be number one. Number two, then, we've got to change our rules and regulations, whether it's rezoning or fix the zoning regulations to address that. That's number two. Main Street, in my mind, is absolutely essential. I will tell you, it was great. I got a call or email the other day for someone that was looking to open a business in downtown, build a new building, which is great. So they're seeing things happening, so that's exciting. And I think that will help increase activity downtown. Next one would be dealing with CMS. This paper, interestingly enough, said that Huntersville Elementary School is getting moved up in the process. We'll see. But that's what it indicates, maybe the next bond referendum. So we'll see. Dealing with CMS and the other is dealing with NCDOT, right? So they are big landowners in our downtown, so those are the kind of things I would say. And that also kind of overlays into NCDOT and Kat's the other question. Conversations with Mamma Mia to purchase? No, there hasn't been that I'm aware of. I don't know, Bobby, you know anything?
It's been a while.
Okay, all right, it's been a while. Okay. Right. Yeah, yeah. What makes this plan different from 2006? Well, it gathered dust. So, I mean, we're Dave's chuckling. Obviously, that's not our intention. I will tell you, I know that a lot of folks are not satisfied that we didn't make much progress in 06 plan, but I will tell you, you saw some examples of we rezoned some property, we changed some rules, we got some new buildings in the downtown, we're getting Main Street, we got Veterans Park, so, you know, we've spent over $40 million on infrastructure that was related to that plan. So, no, I don't believe it's going to be gathering dust. The staff actually listen and take into account the needs of folks living downtown. Yeah, I mean, but there's a, you know, you're not going to please everybody. I know that. So, but yes, I mean, we do believe that that's critical. We struck out the other one because we know about town hall and the town board makes that decision. Communicate regarding Main Street construction projects. So you heard Stephen today. Give you kind of update of what's going to happen. So hopefully in a year or so, be all completed. Road projects planned in 3 years that will impact traffic downtown. Stephen talked about that. You got a sense of that. I'll show you a slide also that might answer some other questions. And then why aren't future plans already approved evident on all handouts? I will just simply say, from our first meeting, we did try to do that, to identify what projects have been approved. Happens to be from the first meeting where we identified the brewery and mentioned about the North State project in Vermilion Front. We also showed you the Greenway that Michael talked about. It's just a few weeks away. We try to start every meeting with an update of what's coming in the pike, what's coming in the office. So we definitely want to do that. We know that 3D things help us all kind of put this into perspective, and you'll start to see, I think, Dave, some stuff from Shook Kelly next week on some three-dimensional. This was from our meeting number 2 where we put in the, you know, this is DPK in our parking deck, and this was the North State project and going to townhomes, going to single family. So we're going to get more of that in this plan. The road projects, so Rama, excuse me, yeah, that's Rama here. This is Stumptown 2025. Is that right, Steve? Still kind of the projection? Depending on funding, right, 2025. So I know we're talking about, you know, right here at the interchange, it's under construction. We all know that. The Gilead 21 is under construction. This is the actual adopted NCTIP 2020-29 plan, and that has Gilead Road PY, which is after 2029. So that's the current situation, right? This kind of shows you some of the, I think it was asked about 21. That's proposed construction in 2025 to get you all the way up to North Cross area. So you kind of see, you've got this in your agenda packet, so I don't have to go over that. But I will point out that the draft plan, as Stephen mentioned, has talked about moving this, and it's draft, so it's not adopted yet, moving this up to 2029 for the 2024-2023 NCTIP. So that's what's in play. I'm showing you this slide because Heather said, make sure everybody understands this is draft. And it's gonna be revised. I mean, I know it's an eye-opener, and I've heard mentioned from my staff that this is showing up on media, social media or something like that. So, this is something to be concerned and alarmed about, but it is not what they're going to build. We don't know what they're going to build, and we are having those conversations with NCDOT, so do understand that this is a draft. I want to just share with you this picture. I was listening to a seminar, and they were talking about calming traffic in downtown Asheville. Thought it did a great job. So this is the before in downtown Asheville. 6 lanes out here, 4 lanes, 6 lanes. They put in a roundabout, and this is after, same picture, just after a few more years. We've got some trees grown, but that's a whole different, same place, just a whole different feel. So, don't ever get discouraged. Don't ever get discouraged, but it takes a lot of fortitude.
You back up to that. This is the new, that's the old?
This is the old. This is the retrofit. This is the new.
I can't help but say this. Oh, please notice on-street parking along those roads.
Yes, you're exactly right.
Yeah. Put it up there.
I like this slide too. Your target speeds for downtown and neighborhoods, 15 to 20 miles an hour.
Oh, gee, y'all gonna go down that road too, aren't you?
Yeah. Well, I almost got hit out here. If it weren't for one of our,
60 miles an hour,
well,
not 25
if it wasn't for one of our Huntersville Ordinance Board chairman for holding me back in front of the Slice House Pizza, I would have been hit. And they were making a red light. Just look at these numbers. Just if you get hit by a vehicle, 9 out of 10 survive. 30 miles an hour, 5 out of 10, and if it's 40, 1 out of 10. So, these are the 2040 plan talked about trying to do Huntersville be at what's called a Vision Zero town. Vision Zero, if you look it up, it's trying to not have pedestrian fatalities. That's what a Vision Zero town is. It's street design. And so these are just some things to think about. But I will tell you, it doesn't come without a cost because, I tell you, I understand DOT, why would they put money into our Gilead Road if in 20 years it's not going to work? That's my money, that's your money. I mean, anywhere else in the state, I wouldn't want them to do that. So I do understand where they're coming from, but these are just some things I thought were interesting. So as we get to next week, where the rubber is going to hit the road, right? This is where the committee, is going to give feedback to Shook Kelly on this composite future. We have comments. I know you do. Yes, ma'am.
I noticed several times you mentioned the town taking over part of Gilead Road. Is that actually a consideration, and what big difference would that make if you did that?
I did not mention it. I purposely stayed away from that, but it could.
At the meetings.
What it would do, yeah, I mean, I know that's been talked about. It would mean that town of Huntersville would decide what would happen here, but that would be, and then we'd also be on the hook financially, right? So there's, nothing comes without a cost. Nothing comes without a cost. So
I know that.
Would the town do it? I don't know. The commissioners, when they sent you the survey, they asked you, and some said yes, and some said, well, tell us what it means to us. And so it's not answered yet. I don't know. That would be a.
So no one's come up with what difference that would make to our town for us to be in charge of it?
Yeah, I mean, the thought was if we can kind of keep this road the same and possibly have another road that comes through the CMS property. It's, again, a 2-lane road, kind of divide and conquer instead of, it was almost the same concept of Main Street. Main Street was a 4-lane thoroughfare initially proposed, and then, excuse me, not Main Street, 115.
Who is in charge of the speed limits? Is it the state or the town?
It's state on state roads, state of North Carolina.
That would be one option. You could talking about slowing
Oh, yeah.
things down.
Yes, yes, you could do that. I mean, everything would have to be worked and coordinated with the state, but yes,
Right.
that would be
Okay.
that. So, again, next week, you're gonna get into this discussion. I will just say, whenever I'm faced with, like, you know, a lot of information, I try to compartmentalize and figure out, where do I want to go with this thing? I will just say, I think that this could be helpful for you as a guide. I mean, like, if you asked yourself about this mobility, so if you look at road improvements, so this organizing principle, at least when we adopted it, it said, treat the car as a guest on all streets, create optimal pedestrian environment along all streets and within nature, plan for the automobile circulation with a street network approach versus dendritic, branched out, tree-like, disconnected pattern, advanced transit pattern for now and for whatever the future may unfold, and seek on-street parking solutions, policy, and design law. All I'm just simply saying is these guidelines or these organizing principles can maybe, if you kind of look at them and think about them as we talk next week about this plan, that would be helpful. The very first meeting I shared with you, a good checklist, I think, that seems to work. And this came from a fellow named Jan Gale, and it's 12 urban quality criteria, protection against traffic and accidents, protection against crime, unpleasant sensory position. These things, again, are just the good things for me to, as I look at different alternatives, I kind of think through these things. And then the last thing I'm going to finish with is a follow-up with Dave Hill said last week. And that was, come down with a big project. Well, this was in the paper today, right? And so this is Kannapolis. They announced possibly ability to do 800,000 square feet of new office and research, up to 50,000 square feet of new commercial and 1,200 residential units in their downtown. So that got just noted out today. I mean, that's the wow factor that Dave Hill is looking for. Not that big? Yeah.
Is that within the campus over there?
Yes, all this area right in here.
The campus.
The campus, exactly. Yeah. It's so in all that area, I mean, that's the big thing. And I can live with the small incremental stuff because I've been here for 21 years and it's been small incremental stuff, so I can live with it. If there's a big home run that comes, great, that's wonderful.
Let me ask you a question, and you may answer this, and you may not answer this. What they've done in Kannapolis over the last 20 years, and I have followed it quite a bit. Kannapolis intrigued me from the time I moved to Charlotte. But would you agree that the key thing that kick-started what's happening in Kannapolis, they were willing to go out and buy a large chunk of land to control what was going to happen in downtown Kannapolis to make sure they got what they wanted?
Yes, but it's predicated on then that land was under control by one person who could sell it. So that's not, most downtowns, you don't have somebody that owns 120 acres in your downtown. That one in Kannapolis, they did.
But
right?
there is opportunity that we could own, not necessarily in one set, but there is opportunity that we could buy, the town could buy large chunks of land in downtown Huntersville to control how we want downtown developed.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I will say, on a smaller scale, the town spent, I can't remember, close to $1 million buying the mobile homes that were out here for trying to. Yeah, was it right? That's very good.
But Kannapolis, David Murdoch,
Yes.
the CEO of Dole,
Right.
he spent hundreds of millions of dollars tearing the mill down. I mean, that's a very atypical situation. And he tore down, how many square, the mills are taking up almost all that land, so.
But the town did commit themselves to a large chunk of land too, though, didn't they?
It was all David
Yeah,
Murdoch.
they did. But I mean, again, I'll just say that's what happened here. Town bought land and has some control over it. So the answer to your question is, yes, the town could jump in and buy something, but you won't find anything of the nature of what you saw over there. But yes, if you want to make things happen, that's one way to make things happen. Sure.
I have a question.
Yes, Elaine.
Going back to what you said earlier, that, you know, whatever plan's adopted, there may have to be zoning changes. And I wonder where height comes into that. What I'm thinking is that anything that's built now has to fit into the existing style or neighborhood. But does that consideration also apply for height? Because if you're looking at potentially 6 stories, and then right across the street is a 1-story building. You know,
Right.
that there's no transition.
There wouldn't be a transition in that particular case. So
Right.
first off, right now, today, the highest you can go is 4 stories in our downtown.
Right.
So that would, so we'd have to change the code to allow that. And then we would have to think as it gets closer, maybe, you know, as it's planned now, you know, what they're looking at trying to do is, let's see here. The 4 stories are in this area here, in this area right in here. So they're kind of close. They're not getting over that. I mean, this is getting into a neighborhood. This is kind of the 4-story or the 6-story area. I'm sorry, 6-story area right in here. So that's, you know, that you might, you know, and if this gets to 2 to 3 stories, well, that's a good transition if you had 6 to.
Well, in particular, I'm thinking of, you know, Charles's buildings where Slice House is, that's basically 1 story. So
Right.
if you look across the street, I mean, who knows what's gonna be where?
Yeah.
Something right, you know, that's a huge differential.
It is. Yeah, it is. I mean, my sense, if the town ultimately goes up to 6 stories, then, you know, the thought would be you're gonna have a very specific geography, and just because there's 1-story buildings there, that doesn't mean, you want it to convert over to multi-story buildings, so.
And as I understand, right now, if you were to rebuild the Slice House building, it would have to be 2 stories.
It'd have to be 2
You
stories.
couldn't build a 1-story.
Right.
That's right.
You
It'd have
can't
to be 2
rebuild it.
stories.
Well, yeah, but.
No, you can't rebuild it because of the setbacks. This is the only building that can get away with that. I couldn't rebuild that building, because they'd want all that roads, they'd want all that for roads.
But you'll never get over 4 stories up to 6 stories without structured parking, and you won't get structured parking without transit. That's why you see all the buildings and going up, all the apartment buildings, it's not surface parking, but they're near transit.
We don't need 6 stories.
We don't need.
I'm just saying,
Yeah.
you won't get it.
Right.
Nobody's gonna
Yeah.
build
Well,
it
good.
because the
Yeah.
parking, structured parking's too expensive.
That's good to know.
Suits me, you know, 4's enough.
Unless you're in concrete, and they build the parking.
Okay, so to add on to Jackson, so Civic Buildings. So I did a count of the churches, houses of worship, between Raymond Church Road, going down 115 to Fairholm. And there are 11 churches. And there are 6 cemeteries. And that group of people, probably Civic Buildings, and including the cemeteries, probably bring in as many people into the downtown area as most anything else. And they require, I believe, on Sundays, on-street parking, for example. Some of them have. I think that we should, in other words, I think whatever plan we come up should be accommodating to the houses of worship, the churches, and the cemeteries.
Yeah, I think, you know, again, if you look at the civic and churches, is 4.2% of the half mile in the area. You're talking about it's a little larger than that, but that's a huge presence.
Yeah, if you shifted it just a little bit to the east from the west, you would include this. This does not include the churches north of Stumptown Road, on Stumptown Road or north. So I challenge you to identify. Not now. Ride around. That'll take you around the downtown area. Thank you.
I have
Thank
another
you, that's
question.
all I had, yes.
So with the, I want to make sure I'm looking at my reference here. With town center, you can have a hotel by right, correct?
Correct, yeah.
Could they have a special permit and have a, 6-story tall hotel if we're not talking about, retail or something?
Yeah, let me get to that if I can. Give me just a second. Apologize for
See,
slipping.
what's the one
Just
out
wanna
on
get
the thing, it's like just 3 or something. The ones
So
on both
here's
ends.
the town center.
Hampton.
Could they, so today, if, with the zoning, you couldn't do it. You're limited to, the tallest building you can get is 48 feet. So that's gonna be 4 stories, basically. there is a possibility they could try to rezone the property and get special permission from the town board. The one place that got it, North State, went from 48 to I think 52 or 53 feet. So they got a little bit taller. They didn't add any floors though, but they got a little bit taller. I think it would be, the way it's written is the board can modify the rules and regulations as long as the spirit of the code is met. And what does that mean then? Well, it happened to be that Discovery Place Kids was at right like 51 feet, so them going up to 52, 53 feet, the board felt like, okay, well, you're not adding floors, so that's okay. But adding 2 more stories to it, I think is gonna get crossing that line, if that answers your question.
It does, yeah.
Anybody else? Excuse me.
I know I don't count, but HOA, when you're talking about the extra 2 stories for the hotels, I was thinking that there is an actual, special use permit for hotels for 2 extra stories that they could apply for. That it's not just extra feet, but it actually is for hotels only.
So that goes through another kind of category, another category, but, so it wouldn't necessarily, you can rezone property, and then we can put it in a special use category, which means it may be okay, but then it might not. Well, let's put it in a special use permit and let it go through a process, public process, and have a debate about it. So that's another possible way you can go with the tall building. Yep.
Thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
That was it.
Thank you, Jim.
Yeah, thank you.
Dave? Next phase.
October 6th. First of all, I want to apologize for back-to-back-to-back meetings and appreciate you all for hanging in there with us. We will have Shook Kelly next week, and we should have an agenda to you by tomorrow. That's all I have.
Wait a minute, next week?
October
We meet on
6th.
the 13th. When's our next meeting?
October 6th.
Oh, that would be interesting.
I'm sorry.
I didn't,
That was on the slide last week, and yeah,
okay, so our next meeting is October 6th.
yes, next Thursday. We will continue to offer food at 5 o'clock.
Say, who's feeding us?
Any questions? Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
A lot of seconds.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, I'm pushing my watercolor.
But you're good.
So, I thought there was a